No one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Glory of Golden State Gaming. I'm your host, Swamp Swimmer, and with me, as always, the burger to my fries, Vespacian.
Hey everybody, that's a good one. How's everybody doing today?
So, recently, not the most recent Marvel movie, but the second most recent, Ant-Man and Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania came on. I didn't see it in the theaters because it got pretty poor reviews, and then it came out on Disney Plus, and I watched it the other day, and man, it wasn't that good of a movie. I did not appreciate it, and the question is, I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe from day one. You know, from Iron Man 1, it's been fantastic, but I think I'm experiencing some superhero fatigue. I'm not excited for Marvel movies anymore. I just wanted your thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, the volume that has been produced is pretty high at this point, and I do think that one of the things that was so genius about the Marvel Cinematic Universe was they tied so much of it together into that main
Avengers,
that Endgame plotline.
Avengers, well, Avengers 1, I remember it was like, it was an event when it came out, and same with Endgame. I mean, maybe they maxed out and now they're just a slow decline away, but I hear Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is really good. That just came out in the theaters. I haven't seen that yet, but man, just Ant-Man was a letdown for me.
Yeah, I'd mentioned on a prior video that I'd watched Black Adam, and it was, I felt a similar way. I was sort of like, they sort of just phoned in, I'd say 90% of this, and probably the most interesting part of it was that the superhero was kind of an anti-hero. Like, he was kind of a bad guy, right? Spoiler alert. Sorry. And that was probably the only part where I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting, right? It's a little different, right? But otherwise, it's like, how many times is there going to be like, if you just focus on the things you love and what makes you special, then you'll be able to overcome the bad guy at the last minute against impossible odds. Like, how many times does that drum get banged, right?
I think, or at least maybe I look at it a different way. The superhero genre in big budget movies, I think, is matured to a point where we want to see something new and different, and like a different play than what you just described. Like, he's superhero, he gets his powers, he faces a struggle, he succeeds in the end. Like,
or it needs the arc, right? One of I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, but I would say that like, objectively, Next Generation is the better show, right? But Deep Space Nine, right, has this arc that makes, it kind of makes each individual story matter, a little bit more. And I mean, I'm sure there could be a lot of, argument. I can think of at least one person that's going to have an opinion about this, but that I think is a good example of how Endgame sort of made what were probably more sort of average better, right? The Endgame arc, right? So, anyways,
Anyway, we'll see what happens next. I'm still going to see the movies. It's just I might not see them in the theaters, but who knows? We'll see.
Great plane watching opportunities, right?
Exactly. But we are into Vespasian's round 3, coming off another win. So you're sitting on, what was it, 25 after 2 rounds, and you get paired into another warrior, our good friend Josh G from the Bay Area, or I guess Sacramento is a better specific location. This is still Refuse Flank, and this is still the special scenario where you get an extra model piece that you drafted, which we'll go into in a second. But good old Josh, God, he ends up on this show a lot. I'm gonna point that out.
Yeah. He's at basically every tournament we go to, right? So it's
true.
Not terribly surprising.
If you are interested in Vespasian's list, please click the link right above my head. It'll take you to the round 1 video where we go over his list in a little more detail. But Josh, he loves his straightforward, smash in the face lists, and he didn't fail with this one. The Chaos Lord and the Black Steed, Symbol of Slaughter, Gluttony, Idol of Spite, just hitty, not a crazy chosen lord that you see sometimes, but still a strong one. Master on Evocation on a horse with Hero's Heart, he's a little fighty. An Adept on Alchemy on foot with the book. 23 Warriors on Greed, Zealot Banner, Fallen, 2x10 chosen. One with Greed and one with Paired Rep and Gluttony. 8 Warrior Knights with Gluttony and Lance, and then 2x5 Flayers.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So I think on the list review I said, Josh, have you ever heard of the Hellmaw? Because I think this would be a perfect list to take advantage of the Hellmaw, right? He's got lots of foot sloggers. He spent tons of points on these chosen.
Yeah.
And they're slow, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I would expect in a Warriors list to come up against lots of targets that the Huntsman Prince, is a perfect counter to, and he has none, right? So there's nothing that he multi-wounds in this, basically. And the truth is, I can't. None of my infantry can fight any of his infantry, right?
Yeah,
so
the chosen can. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a process of basically like my single models, needing to like multi-charge and take off, chosen bricks essentially. So, yeah, but I had a clear mobility advantage in this game. So
yeah, true, very true. Let's jump ahead. Oh, so what special model did you and Josh get?
Yeah, so I got I think his name is Felton, Felton the Yellow Knight, right? So basically. He's a courtier or a Fey Knight, or I can't remember exactly which one, but he was one of those entries from the KOE book. Amazing stat line, right? I was pretty thrilled with the stat line, but he was the Yellow Knight, I guess, because he peed his pants every time he had to get into a fight. he had a discipline of 5 and had to take fear checks in every combat, basically.
Oh, jeez.
So it's kind of a funny, good juxtaposition off these, heroic, knight characters, right? But basically, one of the Fey, non-character Fey knights with a really bad discipline and fear.
And what did Josh get?
He got the Feldrak Elder. But this Feldrak Elder doesn't have hatred against flyers, which is great for me.
Yeah.
And also, and actually, ironically, I think had exactly the same mechanic. So he had his discipline was set very low, and he always had to take fear checks. So we had these two scaredy cat characters basically running around. It was a funny one, and I think I alluded to it in a prior video, but they do have a battle royale in our battle, so should be fun to watch.
All right. Yeah, you put this as green. Actually, I don't think this is a green for you. I think this is more like a yellow, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably varies a little bit more on the mission than the green represents. But at the end of the day, like, I basically don't have to engage him if I don't want to. Like, the majority of my points can just stay away. And if I get Phoenix's Huntsman Prince, Griffin Prince into a target, like, I obliterate it in a turn, right? So if he gives me the opportunity to kind of circle, pounce, right? I can pick up a lot of points by doing that. This was flags, which, obviously his scoring is a lot more robust than mine,
Yeah.
but my overall game plan is essentially have my, 5 single models and the chariots dominate the game and just leave my other stuff in the backfield and hope that they never have to fight a combat.
All right, so this is deployment in Vanguard.
Yeah, so interesting kind of background. So I lost, or I won. Well, I would say I lost the the roll.
You lost by winning.
But by one it, and we had to pick the sides. Actually, not a bad table and deployment to pick the sides on, because there's this massive house that I could put directly in his deployment zone. With refuse flank, that really constrained what he could do. So I wasn't terribly disappointed here. That house caused Josh a lot of fits. His deployment took an exorbitant amount of time.
Quick note. We're not going to harp on it, but Josh, this was a long game for you. We love you, Josh.
It was a long game.
We love you, Josh, but you got to play a little faster.
You'll notice that the venue was starting to shut down because we were so late, and so in the later pictures, the lighting starts to dim. We get some mood lighting for the later turns, but ultimately, what ended up happening here was Josh actually then gave me the opportunity to drop first, which I instantaneously took. Afterwards, we talked about it, and he said that he was doing this because he wanted to see where my scoring was. But from my perspective, like, I know where my scoring is going to be. It's going to be deep in my deployment zone with the opportunity to create flee paths, right? So for me, I was more than happy to even dial that mobility advantage up to 11 and get that first turn movement opportunity, right? So I dropped everything to go first. You can see here, I've got the, I guess sort of left to right. I've got the 3 bolt throwers arrayed, kind of in a triangle formation in the back. I've got my lancers, my archers, my sea guard, and my sea guard with the mocked prince in the back, all well away from any danger. And then I've got all of my single models lined up on the front line, basically. And I used my chariots and my Novagriff on the right-hand side. Basically, I just didn't want him to put his flares kind of far out on the right with opportunities to get into my back line. So I'd use the chariots to avoid that in the early turns. And then again, Josh, love you, Josh, but your deployment took like 45 minutes. He kind of initially thought about putting everything over on the other side of the house. Yeah. Ultimately settled on this. He wanted to go after my scoring. And he wanted to try to zone me from getting around his flanks up on the upper left. So he's got, the Feldrak, whatever, the Scaredy Cat Feldrak. He's got his knights with both of the Master and the Chosen Lord in them. He's got his big warrior block that's got the Alchemy Mage on the left point from our perspective. A unit of Flayers, a unit of Fallen behind that big Chosen there. And that Chosen that he's got in the middle, the kind of reddish ones, are the paired weapon ones. And
the paired weapon gluttony ones,
Yeah, and then the snake-looking ones are the greed ones, I believe, that have shields and different weapons and stuff. And then his other flare unit is, I believe, behind the house that we can't see.
Okay. So you drop for first, so you are taking the first turn, obviously. So this is top 1 movement.
Yeah, so taking advantage of, I just want to make, because this kind of cuts it off for me. So taking advantage of the hill, basically, I was able to bring, and also my kind of charge zoning range advantage. I brought the chariots up on the right-hand side, essentially well out of his charge range, but starting to encircle him, right? You can see I doing the same thing on the left-hand side with the Yellow Knight, the Phoenixes, and then I'm using the hill to zone in the center with both of my princes, and yet also still be out of his line of sight. And I just evacuated the lancers, started moving them back towards the center, and otherwise just kind of opened up shooting paths to start doing some work on his units. So yeah.
Okay, so this is bottom of 2 movements. So this is some big jumps here.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's bring you back, and I can. Sorry about that. So again, deployment took a long time. Boy, did that first turn take a long time from Josh. So
wait, we said we weren't going to harp on it. Let's just move on.
Okay. Fair enough. So basically. So basically, Josh kind of moves up a bit tentatively. He swings his Chosen around, and so I see an opportunity. He has, he advances his big block that has got his alchemy mage in it forward into very easy charge range for both of my princes, and I see an opportunity because he's got one counter charge with the gluttony paired weapon chosen that are not powered up at that point, and because of the way that I could kind of cross the paths. I saw an opportunity to do a lot of damage to that warrior brick, take off the alchemy mage, and I wasn't too scared about the counter charges. So if you advance into that next picture, then you can kind of see what's happening there.
Yeah. So you're into the unit, and then he counter charges with the chosen here.
Yeah. So I charge both in. Because of where he advanced his knights very heavily, you can see there. So I was able to get both the phoenixes out of their line of sight, positioned for following charges into the warriors. The Nova Griff does take off the alchemy mage, no problem, and I was able to reform the huntsman prince so that he can only get 3 chosen in. Those chosen are strength 4, AP 1, right? The alchemy mage is dead. So that means I'm going to get a 2-up, 5-up from the Huntsman Prince. And I figure I probably won't really take any wounds there. So I was really happy with this. He's now pushed his other Flayer unit up on my right. And he did that to prevent me from hitting his chosen with my chariots. He's then also pushed his chosen up. You can see he's advanced his knight block there. And so he did something pretty clever. Let me make sure I've got the picture here. Yeah. So he did something pretty clever with his flayers that I didn't expect. He put them. Yeah, you can kind of see him behind my Nova Griff there. He put them in a position where I didn't have a spot to land with my phoenixes to charge those warriors in the flank, which meant that if his warriors were still there, I would have to first charge the flayers, and at least one, actually both of my only one of my phoenixes would get to overrun. So basically, by sacrificing the flayers, he prevented me from getting both phoenixes in, which was pretty sharp move there. But none of that matters because when his chosen went in, they did 0 wounds to my huntsman. Right? No, that's great. This is exactly what I expected. They did 0 wounds to my huntsman, right? He does almost nothing with his warrior block, but my princes completely whiff. I think I did, and that's so I think that's a total of like 17 attacks that hit on like 2s or 3s and wound on 2s or 3s. And I did, I think, if I recall correctly, I did like 3 wounds, which is a nightmare.
Yeah, so he's up on static. He's up on static.
Yeah, and that was there. Honestly, just didn't even consider. Like, I just assumed I would do somewhere in the neighborhood of like 6 to 8 wounds, and I'd be comfortably ahead. And because he's now 2 banners, charge, flank, big flank, and multiple ranks,
and 3 ranks.
Right?
Yeah.
He even though he does almost no damage to me, he ends up winning by like 3. And I break with both princes, and he runs both of them down.
Oh no!
Yeah. So that's in bottom of 2. I've lost something like what is it, 1,500 points, and both of the princes, including my general, are dead.
Oh, that's painful. Yeah, that's painful.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, at that point in the game, I was like, wow, totally unexpected. I did not even consider the possibility. And so I'm going into my turn 3 with a with some real challenges ahead. But let's leave it here for now, and I'll tell you kind of what happens. So basically, I see one positive of this move is it shuffles around the positioning of his units a little bit, and so what it allows me to do is it he turns his warriors that are currently facing towards my back lines. He turns them to face my phoenixes because he'd rather take a front charge than a flank charge.
Yeah.
But when he does that, he gives me something like a 7 charge from the green Sea Guard that are kind of central near your cursor there. Yeah, he gives me a flank charge with those Sea Guard, into the flank, and because I into the flank of his warriors and also into the flank of his chosen, right? So what I do is I charge the Sea Guard into the chosen. It's pretty short. It might have even been an auto, and you can kind of see where the chosen would be at, right? They're kind of would be on the edge of the hill. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I charge into the flank, right? I buff. I think I get plus. I think I get the strength and maybe also Melodus. I can't remember, or Altered Sight or something. I one way or the other. I buff those Sea Guard up incredibly, and because they're in the flank, I don't do like a ton of damage, but I'm up huge on static res, right? Yeah. And so I break and run down those chosen with my Sea Guard and overrun into the flank of his warriors. So now if you jump to the next picture, you can see, oh, actually, sorry, I forgot. I actually have a picture here. Yeah. So,
what do you know?
So what do you know? How about that? So Sea Guard go in, Phoenixes go in, right? So with this positioning here, I'm able to overrun into the flank of his warriors when I win that combat. And one of my Phoenixes, the Frost Phoenix, is able to go into his flayers, right? Which means that then when I beat his flayers, I will also overrun into his warriors, right? So essentially, in the next combat phase, I'm expecting to break those warriors there. And, to be honest with you, the shape of the game has swung so hugely, basically opposite directions. Right?
That's a crazy swing twice. Yeah.
So the other than that, I just moved my Reaver Chariots out of line of sight on the right-hand side. You can see there. I'm happy to have them continue zoning, and I have continued my dance with the Feldrak Elder, over on the left.
They're both scared of each other.
They're both scared of each other, and I've just continued to move my scoring units around in the back to keep them away from any danger, essentially. And I'm at this point, I've got some good targets to shoot at. I'm shooting at knights, I'm shooting at chosen, right? Because they're just out in the open with no defense, essentially. So big swings here, and some things are working out for me. So we can go on to the next one, because this now shows me with both of those overruns, right?
Yep, so you made it there.
The Sea Guard, and the Phoenix, and now Josh has realized that he's getting into a little bit of trouble in the backfield, so he actually turns his Night Brick around.
Yep.
I don't think that was the right move. I think that if he keeps his Night Brick putting pressure on my back lines, I'm gonna need to feed him at least a unit by the end of the game, and it puts pressure on my caster. There's a lot of reasons why I think he probably should have just kept pressure on with his knights. But I can also understand my Sea Guard are back there. It's an opportunity to pick up a scoring unit, and that's where the action is. All my flyers are back there, so I can understand why he did it. But you can see he's instead using the Feldrak to put pressure on me and is advancing him up, essentially. So
okay.
So yeah.
So this is bottom of 3. So we're going to top of 4 now.
Yeah. So
and you take care of the block. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I break and run, and either run off or run down his block over there. Like I said, with the knights, I don't have there's no percentage in engaging that unit while it's at essentially full strength. So I move the flyers around. I use the Frosty to pin the Feldrak by charging it in the rear. I tried to charge him with the Yellow Knight, but of course
didn't make it. He's yellow.
Didn't want to make it in there. Yeah. But with the Frosty in the rear, the Feldrak doesn't have hatred against flyers. That's a good reminder of that. But with Frosty in the rear, I felt confident I'd pin him for at least one turn, which did what I needed to do, which was prevent him getting further into the back line. And I used the Reavers to chaff. Just want to take no risks of him getting that Sea Guard unit and potentially clawing his way back onto the objective, because right now I've got it pretty well in hand with 2 scoring units dead.
Yeah, you definitely do.
And then I'm using the other flyers to start surrounding his other chosen unit that you can see.
Yeah, this is the Fire
there.
Phoenix here. Yeah.
And he's again he's advancing into all the guns, right? So this is sort of like the charge of the Light Brigade with that chosen unit there.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. We're in bottom of 4 now.
Right. So you can see we've got the mood lighting now definitively. And basically he charges the Reavers, take the chaff. He continues advancing with the Chosen because I've given him no charges.
And I think this is the first turn you really did some work with your shooting, I think, because you took off the back rank of these Chosen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can see that the Frosty did what I needed to do. He didn't do any wounds, unfortunately, but he did hold up the Feldrak. And now I'm getting ready for to try to get that Yellow Knight into the Feldrak at the end there. And I think unfortunately this might be the last picture. Yeah,
it is.
But at the end of the day, I can give you a pretty good indication of what happened here. So in my turn 5, the Yellow Knight makes the charge into the Feldrak, and essentially that combat continues until the end of the game. Nobody does anything. That's just a big whiff fest, and they just sit there essentially. I do go ahead and take the Flame Phoenix and the Chariots into that depleted Chosen unit.
Into the rear.
Essentially, yeah. And I think he kills like a Chariot maybe with whatever couple guys he had left, but ultimately I break his Steadfast and crush him and run him down. What is kind of interesting is that in turns 5 and 6, so now you can kind of envision Feldrak's in combat, Chosen are in combat. So in turns 5 and 6, I basically have only one target, and that's the Knights.
Yeah.
And so I think that I can't remember if it was in turn 4 or 5, but one of those, actually no, it was sequentially. So in turns 4 and then turn 5, his Wizard Master miscasts on like 4 dice casts and ends up he gets the 555 or the 666, and he ends up doing 3 wounds to himself.
Oh no!
From miscast, and so commits suicide. So the Wizard Master is dead, and essentially 2 turns of all of my shooting managed to take off the Night Brick. And then in the top of 6, that Chosen Lord is sitting out in the open, right? Yeah. 3 bolt throwers, take him off.
Wow. Okay. There you go.
Yeah. And so at the end of the game, if I recall correctly, Josh had his Feldrak Elder, which doesn't count for any points.
Oh, this guy,
and his Fallen unit.
Way over here,
I think we're the only things. He may have had 1 Knight left. I can't remember, but essentially I'd gotten everything else.
But he took a big chunk of points out of you.
He did, yeah.
And that ends up...
I lost 1,500 points, but won the objective, so that ends up as a 19-1.
But it's still a 19. I'm surprised that's a 19. I thought you would have gotten a 17 or something, but hey, congrats, that's awesome.
I think the issue is I think that I got like close to 4,000 points off of him, right? So I got almost his entire army.
Yeah.
Right. It was maybe the Knights or half points for the Knights maybe, and the Fallen, that was it, right? Whereas he got obviously the 2 big characters and my Reavers, but other than that. So essentially he got like 1,700 out of me. So it's a multi-thousand point delta. So yeah, it ended up being a 19-1.
Wow, I think, man, I look back at this game. First of all, it's super swingy. As you said, your character's losing in combat and being run down is crazy swingy. And then you getting a double flank on its big blocks and breaking them is swingy also. I just feel like if in this combat, when he beat your characters, if he would have overran straight into your scoring units, God, it just would have been a different game, right?
Yeah, potentially. I think that he was concerned about doing that because it would have presented rears to the Phoenix.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. We didn't really discuss that particular option and why he went that direction. But I think the reason he did it was because he didn't want to present the rear of those units to the Phoenixes, which, to be fair, is a reasonable concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was a crazy game. Wow, I only caught pieces of it when I was going to dinner and watching you still in turn 4 or 5 or whatever. And but that's an awesome game. Josh, thank you for the game. All right, cool. So that puts you on a big win. That puts you up to what, 25 plus 19 is 44?
44. Yeah.
You passed me, because I got that loss in round 3. So next we'll have my round 4. If anyone's still watching, please like and subscribe. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everybody.